Welcome back to another YouTube video, and today I am joined with Alex from ODYS.
Oh, I've triggered some balloons with my victory sign.
So, welcome to the podcast, first of all.
Sorry.
And
Yeah.
I think that this is probably the best time to have you on because everybody right now is talking about expired domains. Are they dead? Where should they buy expired domains? Should they buy expired domains? And I think that this will be quite an educational process for people that are potentially looking at buying expired domains or people that have already bought expired domains and they might also be a little bit worried, or potentially they might not even be doing expired domains, but they might be repurposing domains as well. So for anybody that doesn't know who you are, who's Alex and what is ODYS?
Yeah. Alex is the founder of ODYS or ODYS Global. We're a global domaining company. We've been around for a very long time, but when in 2019, when I found out that my wife is pregnant, I said, I'm going to go build a big brand in a marketplace because I cannot just trade domain via Skype. I want to spend more time with my daughter. So that was one of the reasons why I actually started building and investing in ODYS or ODYS as a brand. The brand itself has the initial of our domains, your SEO. So it's basically ODYS, our domains, your SEO in a way, but then it kind of pivoted to, just the short version. So been in this business for quite some time, and I have a confession to make. I do not belong to the SEO is dead crowd. First of all, because I'm an optimist, and second of all, because SEO is not dying, it's evolving like every single other business model out there. So I belong to the SEO is thriving crowd, and I believe both you and your colleagues at Searcheroo and other business ventures do too. So that's more or less about me. I think that would be enough for now.
Yeah, I think that it's crazy that I think like the first time that I ever purchased a domain from you would have been on Skype, and at the time
Yeah.
I was like, this is really dodgy, buying a domain off Skype. So it's amazing to see how far you've come over the years and stuff. But one thing that I want to ask you is how did you get into expired domains, or actually, how did you get into this SEO side of stuff? Because I know you've been doing it for a very long time.
Well, obviously, just like most other folks in the industry, just searching for a side hustle, for a way to make, more money, get some additional, free time, be able to work at my own pace, this kind of stuff. So I followed plenty of people, had the chance to work with some really great mentors throughout the year. But I think the domaining part is more impressive because I remember still using FreshDrop. There was a service, freshdrop.net, back in the days, that is like 2006, 5 or so. And that was an absolute gold mine. And I still remember, like, it was so fascinating to see all these aftermarket domains that are either for sale or expiring or transitioning, and actually deep diving and discovering what happened to them historically. And I believe when we'll end up talking about the repurposing thing, which I believe is like the repurposing penalty which Google brought to the SEO industry and expired domains or age domains, is a good thing, because back in the days, I wasn't even thinking in the direction of repurposing. For me, matching a domain with an idea that resembled the old topical authority, you can name it so, of the domain, was the most enticing thing that you could think of. For instance, you could take, I still remember these days, one of the first age domains that I ever bought, and I launched a site on it, was the domains related to spirituality. So for me, buying a spirituality related domain, so it was about psychic readings, and they even had like this, they had mystics in the name, and it was a former club. So we perfectly matched the intent. I even remember former members of the club emailing us and saying, you're doing a great job, the content is great, may I contribute? So I don't really believe in repurposing unless there is something specific for your business that you need repurposing for. It doesn't make sense. Even the domains that you and James and Satcher bought from us, they were very niche specific to whatever you built on them. And that triggered, so it's not a problem as long as it serves the user and it makes sense for the visitors.
Yeah, definitely. So then, obviously, you were selling expired domains on Skype, like when I very first met you. And I think that there was a few other people that I know of that were also buying like years before I even met you. And then you've set up ODYS. So what's the team looking like now? Whereabouts is the team located? How many members of staff have you got, etc.?
So the original team is in India, and
Right.
it still
Okay.
is. And I'm kind of proud that we actually never fired anyone from the India team, and it's been more than 10 years now, because they have been the core foundation of the company. I've personally taught them everything I know about domains and due diligence, so they have been with us longer than any other teams. And now we have, the company is Estonian incorporated, like we have accounting and legal there, a couple of other roles, administrative roles there. We have the India team, and for the past 2 years, I've been trying to build one in Eastern Europe. Originally, I thought about Ukraine, then we did one in Moldova, hired developers here. Vlad is from Moldova, by the way, Vlad the Lad, as he's known these days. And yeah, so the team has a couple of locations, that's why it's global.
Right.
But I think that sometimes I always kind of fancy the idea of expanding and growing really big, but then I kind of return to the idea that what I really want is for our revenues to grow, not necessarily the team. So if you can get more sales or expand with the same team and avoid all the bureaucracy in bigger teams, that would probably be neat. And every single time I kind of return to this school of thought, and I kind of like keeping it small. Small is beautiful, especially with agencies.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when people are initially sometimes setting up agencies, they have the dream of like having 200 staff, and they don't know the headaches of 200 staff. That's 200 individuals that might have personality clashes with somebody else in that office, for example. So I think I'm very similar in your way, where I'm like, right, let's just streamline the team and make the most amount of profit. Obviously not trying to overload the team with like 25 hours worth of work every
Yeah.
day, but that makes sense. So I think the biggest question that everybody has is, are expired domains dead?
Definitely not. And as discussed before, before you hit record, we're talking, this has been a blessing, because at the core foundation of our competitive advantage as a brand, as the ODYS brand, is due diligence. I've sent you a press release. We're announcing due diligence as a service these days. Today we're actually releasing the press release, like launching the service itself. And the thing is, and I'll give you just some very basic observations in terms of our quality control for domains and why we specifically kind of like what Google did, because it separates the bad inventory of the aftermarket of the aged domains from the good one. So for instance, we did a test last year where we've scraped, actually didn't scrape, we just copy pasted and exported all the inventory that we managed to get access to from all our competitors. And we gave that report to our due diligence team, and they applied our vetting process to that inventory. I think it took almost a month because we had to deal with lots of domains. And only 0.1% of all the inventory passed our due diligence. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not in the business, they're bad, or they're doing something wrong. I'm just talking about how strict we are when it comes to due diligence. Another thing is, 2 years ago, in 2022, we've launched the Sell Your Domains program, SYD. And now anyone can basically submit a domain for review, and if it passes our due diligence, it will get published. And in point 1.3 of the seller submitted domains policy, I've sent you the screenshot, we have not aggressively repurposed domains, which means, for instance, if we're dealing with an old dancing related domain, and at some point someone tried to build a dance site, well, that's fine. But if you try to build a Viagra site or a casino site on dance domain, like, that's a red flag in my opinion, and we wouldn't accept those. So I think, like, this may sound like a joke, but I think Google is kind of aligning with ODYS of where we stand in terms of what we approve of in terms of quality for our domains, because there is so much spam gibberish and just bad stuff on the web that if you want to have good results when launching a new site or using an H domain to your advantage, you have to work with the best ones and make sure they haven't been abused. So this is more or less on our view as a company on what happened with H domains. And I've also sent you some screenshots, like fresh one, 7th of March. And you've seen spikes, and these are really newly launched sites, and even some reversals on some other domains that were built on our domains. So I think the problem would be with really bad abuse that some apply to H domains, not with the entire concept.
Yeah, but one thing that I want to do as well is I'll just quickly screen share my screen. So as you can see here, just before the core algorithm update, this website shot up. And this was...
No, this is actually one day, because it was on the 5th. This is on the 7th, actually, one day after, okay. So 24 hours after.
Yeah, and then you've got another one there as well.
Yeah, this is a reversal, I think, from the helpful content update.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. And then one thing that I also want to speak about as well is, first of all, I think that this number is crazy. The 0.14% would pass the rigorous vetting process, which actually leads me on to my next question. Why is ODYS so expensive? Because there's been times where people have asked me that, and I'm like, well, I understand why it's expensive, but you might not be able to understand why it's expensive. So why is ODYS expensive?
Well, I wouldn't call it expensive. I'd put it this way. Do you need a domain or not? Or even more, will investing in a domain solve a problem in your business? Because if it doesn't solve a problem, if it's not a good fit for whatever you want to build or do, then you don't need a domain to begin with. Mm-hmm. Now, if it solves a problem, cost isn't a thing. You look at ROI. Like, if you can make more money or you can have an impact on the bottom line of your business using an H domain from our marketplace, cost shouldn't be a concern. You're looking at the ROI. You're not living in a cost world. You're living in an ROI world. Now, in terms of the overall pricing, there are two things. The first one, if you're able to buy a $100 H domain or expired domain or an aftermarket domain, most likely there is a problem with that domain. Mm-hmm. Most likely, because it's almost absolutely impossible for high quality domains with lots of power and a good name, a non-trademark name, like a generic name that you can safely use for your business, to be available that cheap. It's simply impossible. Now, another thing, let's take a very generic name like uklawyers.com. Now, if this domain wouldn't have had any link whatsoever, like historical link, like as the link profile, just the name alone is worth a lot of money. Like, if you go to a marketplace that sells domains, there is intrinsic value in good names. When we first launched the marketplace, we didn't launch it with just gibberish names that you can use to spam the web. That wasn't our interest. We wanted to have good names that people can build businesses on. So the naming value of a domain, the name value, would actually play a very important role. So you cannot ignore it. We sold nylawyer.com, like newyorklawyer.com. That's a huge domain. We sold it for 40 grand. Like, half of the value of this domain is just the naming value. Yeah. And now, to the naming value, if you add the SEO value or the fact that it's clean and one, like, there is no nylawyer.com out there. There's just one such domain. Mm-hmm. And if it has like history and if it has traffic on links, like the value will shoot up inevitably, because even the auctions dictate the price in a way. Yeah. So we are talking about very high quality and rare inventory, and this is our focus.
So here's one. I want to give a few examples, because I've seen the websites that have been hit using expired domains. And I kind of want this to be like more so of like an activity where you kind of give the ODYX stamp of approval, or you might say, Kaz, I don't recommend it, but you can do it if you want, right?
Yep.
So let's say, for example, I am very much into my fitness. Um, I have run ultra marathons. I know a lot about running. Um, really well, like maintained guy in the gym, right? And I come to you and I say, "Hey, Alex, I want to start a fitness blog. Would that be beneficial for me to do that?"
Definitely. And in fact, for the past 2 days, we've analyzed most of our customers who built brands or launched sites on H domains, which actually are experts or know
Mm-hmm.
more than the average Joe at what they do, or they operate companies, agencies, businesses, whatever. It's, I hate to admit it, but most people who have been hit are people who just want to make a buck online. They're
Yeah.
not specifically good at what they do. And those who actually have good sites, they are specifically good at what they do, like they're travel experts or fitness experts or marathon experts. So, because the social fortress that Matt Diggity would talk about in the day, they actually are active on social media. They talk about this stuff. So these are all quality signals for their flagship site, for their brand, for their blog. And in none of the cases where the operators of those websites are actually experts in what they do, we've noticed a drop. Like it's absolutely flat. Like as traffic was stable or growing, nothing
Mm-hmm.
really happened. Like
Mm-hmm.
real companies, brands, personal brand, these are not affected. Every single time I see the exact same pattern is people who just want to, game the system, make some quick money, post 10,000 pages, get some leads, get some ad revenue. These are the ones that get affected because they are lazy to put in the time to build a personal brand or a corporate brand as someone like a fitness expert would do for themselves, because that's their core, let's say, bread and butter.
Yeah. So okay, let me give you another example. I've got three examples, right? So
Sure.
example number two is, let's say, um, let's say I'm a law firm, right?
Yep.
Kazraslawyers.com.
Yep.
And my competitor down the road, alexdrewlawfirms.com, they've went bankrupt. And in the UK, it's very normal for this to happen. A liquidator would come in and essentially put a valuation to everything. So if there's 10 computers, they would say, right, these 10 computers are valued at 5K. If the website was ranking, for example, or if there is a website there, they might put a valuation of like another 5K or 10K to that. If I, as kazraslawfirms.com, bought alexdrewlawfirm.com, and then I basically potentially done like the acquisition method and said, hey, we've actually purchased alexdrewslawfirms.com. Is that okay to do?
That's not, that's a real world case scenario.
Right.
This is what happens. That's why I claim, and I kept saying it, Google is not against ordinary everyday practices that involve domain redirects, using old domain, merging sites. They're against someone hurting their reputation. They're against events like the Conch House, when these two very beautiful fellas made almost $1 million in 2 months by scraping Amazon. And one of the reasons, and I've been talking to Colin, by the way, the other day, and I asked his thoughts on this, and he said, well, this is a Conch House triggered event. Like
Mm-hmm.
Google doesn't, and I completely understand, if someone hurts my brand, I will most likely find a means to reply, to react to that. And that's just common sense. Like you
Yeah.
cannot openly talk about manipulating Google, making $1 million from scraped content on an H domain and expect Google won't take measure against such aggressive repurposing. So the real case world scenario that you described is absolutely perfect. And this is what actually happens on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis.
Yeah, I think the most famous 301 that I can think of, and you might have a couple of these examples as well, is when New York Times bought Wordle. I don't remember if you remember
Yep.
that, but they basically, New York Times saw how many people were playing Wordle on a daily basis, and then they bought Wordle.com and they 301'd it, and now if you actually search Wordle, it's actually a page on New York Times, and it's still serving the purpose of what Wordle was. The game itself is there. They've not just redirected Wordle.com to try and rank for, I don't know, best accountants or best lawyers or whatever else. The intent is still the same, and I think that's probably the biggest thing to take away from this. Like what Alex has been saying, it's like, and I've got another screenshot that I will very quickly screen share. It's not the fact that Google is against 301s, it's the fact that Google's against buying an expired domain and repurposing that domain for something that is completely irrelevant. And I've got a third example, but very quickly, I just want to share my screen again.
Yeah, and before you share, I have another one for New York Times, Wirecutter. Do you remember Wirecutter?
Ah, yeah.
And if you Google Wirecutter, you'll see it's nytimes.com/Wirecutter. That was a huge affiliate website. And
Yeah.
301. And New York Times has plenty of 301. So whenever I ask the questions, I get asked the question, how many 301s is too many? Well, there is no limit if you're doing the right thing. Are you serving the user intent? Are you, benefiting the user?
So this is a screenshot directly from the Google March 2024 update. And right at the end, it says, it's fine to use an old domain for a new original site that's designed to serve people first. So again, going back to the Wordle example, if I just load up Wordle, you search Wordle, even though it's on the NewYorkTimes.com, you still are able to access this website and play your Wordle every day. So it's still serving the actual main purpose of the intent. So example number 3, Alex. Let's say I am a website that is trying to sell Viagra, and I purchase a domain that it's got some Wikipedia links. It potentially has a New York Times link into it, but that expired domain is a butcher website, and the only reason why I'm purchasing that domain is because it's a DR40 or a DR60, and I'm like, right, that's got a lot of decent links. It's going to cost me, let's say, $5,000, but I'm just going to 301 redirect that and sell as much Viagra pills as I can.
That might only work, in my opinion. Like, first of all, you shouldn't do it. There is no long-term benefit. And now, as an online pharmacy, you should ask yourself, like, what is the benefit of doing that? Unless you have a very bad SEO consultant or team, you will do it. You will do it, yeah. So my position on this, first of all, don't do it. Second of all, there is, like, if you're a legit online pharmacy, and we actually worked with a startup, a UK online pharmacy startup, and we worked with the owner. And by the way, they haven't been affected. They have a couple of 301 redirected domains into the site. Korai helped them with the topical, a map, and clusters, and we helped them power up initially via this redirect. What they did, and they're an online pharmacy, we helped them redirect, and we only helped with the redirect. It wasn't an actual domain that we owned, but the strategy, because we actually have very good methodology on the redirects and on page level and making sure that the visitors get what they want, the intent, the bounce rates, we take care of all that. So what they did is they bought a former domain, which was basically the encyclopedia of medication.
Right, okay.
And it had thousands of specific medication pages. And now these guys, as an online pharmacy, they have thousands of products. And it took us a month and a half. Alexander and the technical team handled that. It took us a month and a half to match every single encyclopedia page on a specific medication. Think X-Meds, with the X-Meds page that they sell. And I'm not sure, and the former site still had traffic. Now, I'm sure that almost a year and a half have passed. They might even had conversions from the old site because they were so specific, and someone searching for a specific medication would find that medication listed for sale with a description, and with their thing is like very quick delivery of medication. So that is how you actually take advantage. And that was an expired domain. I mean, it was an expired medication encyclopedia. Like if they would have let it expire and didn't get it, some spammers would, and they would do some nasty thing with it. And I said, well, it's good that you got it. Now you can actually put it to good use and help people and actually satisfy the whole intent. Because I don't think Google has a problem even with abuse. But as long as people find that abuse in their search engine, now they have a problem with that. And if you do it right and it doesn't look abusive, it's not abuse, it's actually helping user, then there is no problem. So definitely not a butcher's site to an online pharmacy. But there are lots of high quality, like the encyclopedia example, domains out there that you could use, and even sites, because domains are one thing, but you can actually buy a live site. Like go and buy a live site, go buy a competitor. Maybe you want to operate it separately. Maybe you want to go the New York Times route and merge it with your site. Like there's no problem whatsoever with that.
Yeah, definitely. So here's one then. Let's say we were to partner up, and we have an e-commerce store selling tables, right? Just office tables, potentially office chairs, etc. What would you be looking for as an SEO slash expert, expert in expired domains? Like, how are you gonna essentially say, right, I'm going to buy this domain, or no, I'm not going to buy this domain? Like, is there anything that you look out for and you're like, no, completely against that?
We actually have a client that operates one of the biggest office furniture companies in Australia. And we did a topic cluster on standing desks for them. And the way we did it, we actually built the topic cluster on and that was once in a lifetime opportunity. So we had a domain in the marketplace. I don't know where and how we got it. It was a campaign to have office workers across Australia use standing desks. It was like a awareness campaign, and it had a domain. It was like something like Get Australia Standing Up or whatever. And we used that domain to build a cluster on standing desks. And then we merged it with his main site because, and I think he's still getting traffic because the campaign was big and it still had awareness. So people were actually typing in the browser the domain name. So, and that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and that's a perfect match. So this is specifically what I'd search for. Like if you're selling standing desk, well, look for, first of all, office furniture, ideally. But if you're lucky, you can get an actual standing desk related domain belonging to a former company. I think if the former clients of the company who bankrupted cannot find the company, that's a bad user experience. But if you actually take the domain, redirect it and say, well, that company no longer exists, I'm sorry, but we've bought the domain, we've bought their asset, they bankrupted, now we can offer you an alternative. Please reach out to us. Here's the phone number. Well, that's like the idea funnel, even for a sale. So this is specifically because SEO has to generate, has to have an impact on the bottom line. It's not just about, whatever practice you preach.
Yeah, definitely. And not only so we've both touched on this, to be fair, and we're saying if a company goes bankrupt, you should try and potentially reach out to the liquidators and purchase the domain. But one other thing that I want to make certain that people understand as well is sometimes people set up blogs, like bloggers set up blogs that aren't SEOs. They might not be able to monetize the website because they might not be great at monetizing. They might not know what Google Display Ads is. They might not know what Mediavine is, Ezoic, etc. So then they just give up after 12 months, right? Some of those websites, you can actually reach out to them and potentially purchase them as well. Like, for example, there might be a fitness blog that's not been touched in the past 12 months. You can very easily reach out to them and say, hey, are you looking to sell? I can buy the website off you for 5K, 6K, whatever. And I think that a lot of people have started to do that as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's not the easiest way to buy. We've done it. We've tried outreaching to bloggers, former website owners. Usually there is a correlation between how often they post and their availability. So if they haven't touched their blogs for 12 months, most likely you won't be able to easily reach out to them. So we've noticed that. So we've stopped using that as a means or a method to get buy sites domains. Well, there is still a conversion rate. It's just not worth the investment, at least for us. Like we couldn't figure it out. That's why we're buying like from the industry, from domain investors, from auctions, or just recommending you go there. So, but definitely that is a great way. And sometimes, as marketers, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, what we could do is, let's say someone runs a fitness blog, and the best they could do is actually monetize with, Mediavine, and usually you are at the, very bottom of the food chain when you're monetizing with ads. Most money make those who actually buy the ads.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken to lots of people who actually what they did, they bought content websites that were monetized by ads and they started selling their own product. And they positioned themselves as a company. And guess what? When you have a company that's actually present through EAT, through an address, through presence, through a phone number, through all these good EAT signals on a content website, you are not going to get the same level of treatment from Google as those content website marketers who don't care about this stuff. And they always bitch and moan about betting slap, but they don't operate as companies.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point made by you, because that happens a lot in the gambling space where people will set up an affiliate site and potentially like Bet365 might come along in 3 years' time and say, hey, Alex Drew, gambling.com will purchase you guys. And then what they do is because they are Bet365, they will essentially have their own brand at the top of the tables and stuff like that. So it's almost like a billboard ad
Yep.
for their own brand. So that happens a lot, and I think that's one thing as well to definitely bear in mind, that if you guys are trying to diversify your income streams, try looking at other competitors in your space, and you might say, well, this guy's only doing display ads, whereas I can place my affiliate links on that website and I could potentially double the revenue overnight. So that's also another thing to look at. And also, and again, in the gambling space, and I know that there are other industries that do this, but more so in the gambling space, you get what's called like grandfathered affiliate deals. So if, say for example, if I've been doing gambling affiliate for, let's say, 7 years. I've built up my affiliate accounts, and Alex might come along and he wants to set up a brand new affiliate in the gambling space. He might only, let's say he only gets 10% rev share. I might be on 60% rev share. So I could very easily just purchase Alex's website and triple the revenue very easily just by swapping out the affiliate links. So one thing that I want to ask you about, because I get asked this a lot as well, is what's the ODYS vetting process looking like? Because again, you guys are premium pricing. There are definitely cheaper options, but I've looked at the cheaper options and the quality is nowhere near as good. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an ODYS mentor. Of course, I enjoy a budget price, right? So, for example, if Alex is selling a domain at 5K and I can get that domain for 2.5K, I would. But I've just not been able to find somebody that's as quality as you guys. So, what goes into the actual vetting process?
I think that most companies in this business are pretty good at vetting. The problem is they compromise on quality.
Okay.
In order to avoid missing sales, for instance. If they don't have enough inventory in X niche, they would get even the bad stuff just to have a sale, just to make the sale. We do not compromise on quality. So we could start, for instance, from trademarks. Like trademarks is huge. I've seen so many domains being taken away. Well, sellers don't care, but that affects your reputation. And if you start looking for bad ODYS reviews online, you won't find any, because reputation is probably, we're in for the long run, like reputation is probably the biggest asset that we have. So we do not compromise on quality. The next one is probably, and that's something that I had in the list, is all sorts of link spam abuse. Like very few care. For instance, let me give you an example. There is, Majestic, right? So they have something that which Ahrefs doesn't, and that is historical backlink profile. So they actually serve, like Ahrefs has it, but it's easier to check via Majestic. So there are domains that had been abused like 5 years ago. Now that abuse might be a problem, but we do not compromise. If we find any type of spam there, we simply say no, regardless how good the domain is. It might even work for someone. It might even be the best fit that someone paying us big money to get it. We'll say, no, we cannot vet this domain. The third one is email abuse. Some people buy domains, apparently they're not repurposed. They don't have any might not have any Google indexing issues. They might have a perfect backlink profile, but they have been aggressively used for email spam. And that is another thing. So regardless if SEO is your thing, we won't sell you or won't vet a domain for you. Obviously, search engine penalties, also all sorts of indexing issue, like we really don't want to buy and list on the platform domains that aren't or cannot get indexed or have indexing issues, all sorts of spam. So there are plenty of things. One of the most important, which lots of other companies compromise on, is 301 redirects or 302 because they're basically the same. And I think people have misjudged when Google said, if page A or domain A has been redirected to page B or domain B longer than a year, most likely we will treat all the links or assets, incoming links page A had, as belonging to page B, even if the 301 redirect is interrupted. That's why, from an SEO perspective, if we look at the domain beyond the name and we really want to use whatever assets in terms of link it has to its advantage, we will not accept domain that has been historically 301 redirected. Like, that's our process. Some may do, we do not.
Yeah.
So we're very, very, very strict. And obviously the last one, which kind of aligns with what Google did, and I've sent you a screenshot of our policy for accepting domains in the marketplace. It clearly says, no aggressively repurposed domains. Like if you had, and I gave this example, dancing domains, and you want to create a dancing blog and then list it for sale with us, that's fine. But if you had a dancing domain and then started an online pharmacy or a casino site, or God knows why, we'll say, no, sorry, like our buyers would ask, like, Alex, why do you accept aggressively repurposed domain? Like, how does that work? So we do not compromise on quality whatsoever. And obviously, if you're an SEO, you should know that we only work with domains which are powered by organic links. Like if you try to artificially inflate metrics or just build links through guest posts or whatever fancy link building method there is these days, we want to see links generated by legitimate marketing efforts. Mm-hmm. So that's more or less what we do when we vet a domain.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one thing that I want to, or one thing that I've said in the past is, if you were to go and buy guest posts, there's pros and cons to guest posts. If you were to go and buy niche edits, there's pros and cons to the niche edits. If you want to go and buy a press release, there's pros and cons to it as well. What's some pros, and also what are some cons to expired domains?
So the UK pharmacy startup, and my friend who launched the startup, he was eagerly trying to buy a very brandable health-related domain for his startup. And they're an actual startup with funding. So it's an actual company that delivers, that has logistics and all that. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't deliver one because he knew he has a lot of digital marketing experience. So he knew if he starts with an H domain, niche relevant H domain, that will help him kickstart, that will help him get more traction. And obviously he's solving a problem. I mean, he's delighting the market, he's satisfying the customer. So that is the biggest pro. However, if you do not need a domain to begin with, maybe you don't have the budget, maybe it doesn't even solve a problem. For him, it solved the problem of not having to invest tens of thousands of dollars into whatever SEO companies or agencies would sell him. So he would later engage in content and links, but initially, he would only have to focus on that particular domain. So for him, it made all the sense in the world to try and get one.
Yeah.
Now, if you do not have a problem, or you have a different business model, do not consider buying a domain in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I've been telling people, maybe you don't need a domain in the first place. Like, why do you need one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And then when you tackle this way, and buying a domain actually solves a problem, helps save money, guarantees ROI, then cost isn't really a thing. And you kind of say, guys, you've saved me a lot of money, and you've helped me take the right decision. So it doesn't become a price thing anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I think one other con potentially as well is, like what you said, trying to find something that's super niche that also has backlinks. The SEO side to it sometimes can be difficult, and in that case, you might decide to just go and buy a branded domain fresh off of Namecheap or GoDaddy or whatever. But there's been a lot of examples in the past where people have tried coming to me and they're like, Kaz, I needed an expired domain that's also brand worthy to do with, I don't know, pink fluffy toys, and it's like, Jesus, that's going to be a difficult one.
Yep.
But yeah, I just think that it's important for everybody to know the pros and cons when they should look to get an expired domain, because it might not be for everybody as well, and when they should look to get an expired domain. But away from the 301 talk, because I feel like we've covered it in depth now. Your marketing strategy, I really like it. Like, I've seen you at stands. I've seen you at multiple conferences now. You've obviously sponsored the likes of Craig Campbell and stuff. But when it comes to the ODYS branding and sponsoring all these events and guys and stuff like that, what's your thought process? How did you get good at marketing, if that makes sense?
I've bootstrapped this business more than 10 years ago, and it has grown purely based on relationships, building long-lasting relationships. That is the highest ROI you can get, and that is the best marketing. And one of the reasons why we sponsor events is not just to fancy with our presence there, but to actually meet new people or meet existing customer partners, mentors, friends. Go have a drink with them. Go hang around. That yields probably the highest return on everything, and not just events, but anything that ends up with a good relationship. Because people think, well, let's do ads, let's do influencers, let's do this and that. It's actually building relationships. Because what happened yesterday and how we got on the podcast, I've published on Facebook, this specific clarification from Google saying it's okay to use an old domain. And Castro Pingmain said, well, I've been thinking in the same direction. I said, how about we do a podcast and actually explain, educate the crowd a little bit on this particular aspect of the announcement, because everyone read the headline. So this is how we got to this podcast. And if I didn't know Cast, the podcast would have not have happened. And now we got the chance to actually educate, calm people down, because everyone is panicking and there's lots of uncertainty, specifically via this relationship that we have. So I'm a big advocate of building relationships with people, having good reputation, being very helpful, not necessarily aiming to sell something every single time, but actually be helpful. In regards to marketing, look, you can do any type of marketing, but if you have a bad reputation, it won't work. So you need to work on your reputation. And the due diligence part and the process of vetting domains that we've put so much emphasis throughout the year is something that contributed to the reputation. And I think lots of people put too much importance on actually spending lots of money on marketing, when you can actually grow and build a good name by doing what you should do right.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, is not compromising on quality, having a good reputation, actually not pissing people off online, because that happens all the time, being rude to customers, being rude to partners, arguing, just be nice to everyone. So I think more or less that's all there is to it. Plus, just take advantage, help your friends. If you want to launch an event and you say, Alex, will you sponsor it? I don't know the ROI that I'll get, but I know that I'm investing in the relationship with you. That will probably be a good thing for the long run.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing that I take away from you, because there was a guy that I sent to ODYS, because he was, I think he was trying to buy an expired domain, or he might have just been starting out in SEO, and he booked in a call with you. I think this was like last month or the month before, and he actually sent me a thank you after the call that he had with you, because you actually turned them away. You said an expired domain isn't for you, whereas a lot of sales guys would have been like, no, buy that expired domain. You can 301 redirect it to whatever you want. And then he was basically like saying, yeah, you guys are like, you actually do care about what your customers do. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, because if a load of people had bought an expired domain from ODYS, and let's say half of them were on Twitter right now crying, saying my website's been hit, your business ODYS would be in the ground.
Of course.
So I think that's another big thing to look at when we are talking about this subject, because right now you go on Twitter and everybody's screaming and crying and everything. But what so obviously you said that you set up ODYS because you had a daughter
Yeah. One of the reasons. One of the reasons.
One of the reasons. So what, like, obviously you said you wanted more free time. Has that been a checkbox? Because I know that a lot of entrepreneurs
No.
set up
No, it
they
didn't
set
work
up a
as I
business and
thought
it's
it
like,
would. It didn't work as I thought it would, because back in the days, most of the selling was done by myself, via Skype and, just hanging around with people. And then I thought, if I build a marketplace, which is a self-service, you log in, you add a domain to cart, you basically check out, and that happens even when I sleep, for instance. That doesn't necessarily work, because there are lots of cases when people have questions, and we are not the kind that would ignore them. And if I feel like we have to say no, we will say no, and that's still sometimes, in some of the cases, it does require my involvement. However, we have a team. Like, we're a real I wouldn't say that we weren't a real company, but we're structured like a company. We're flat. We don't have like this fancy hierarchy, but I have like a chief of operation. I have a finance. I have a very good head of finance. We have a technical support team. We have dedicated account managers. Everyone is trained, so that did help a little bit. I still work more than I ever did, but that's the entrepreneurial way, I guess. That will happen, and I don't quite align with retiring, and I think it will be till the very last breath. But I think we did something nice, because at some point, just making money, printing money by helping people selling domains wasn't fulfilling.
mm-hmm.
So I think building a real company, a brand, creating jobs in a way, building a team, having a mission, a strategy, was that next step that I actually needed. Because at some point I thought, like, how long can I keep doing this? So
Yeah.
I think, even though it wasn't a check mark, it did deliver some sort of fulfillment, like somewhere down here.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there's obviously other vendors that do what you try to do, or they all do like similar stuff. But I think with the ODYS model, and the biggest thing for me is, there's times, even if I'm purchasing a domain, I might get stuck with something like transferring the domain, or like, how do I pay for it, whatever else, and I can just shoot you a message, or I can shoot one of the ODYS members a message, potentially Vlad, and they'll very quickly just reply to me saying, "Oh yeah, you need to, I don't know, sign up to GoDaddy, and then we'll transfer it." So I think that's the biggest thing. Whereas other marketplaces, it just feels like you're kind of on your own. Like, I've used the likes of Spamzilla, I've used other marketplaces as well, and they're not as a well-oiled machine. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Like, they might have a big inventory, but like what you mentioned, a lot of spam.
No, Doug, I actually know Doug. We occasionally talk. Doug is the founder of Spamzilla. It's a completely
Right.
different business model. Like, and it's
Okay.
very cheap, because they actually give you, like, it's an aggregator of domain with certain filters, and it still serves a purpose. I know they're selling. I know they have an active business model. So it's completely
Mm-hmm.
different. It's for the geeky kind who want to go there and spend a week or a day or 24 hours, find a domain. We're more on the entrepreneurial side. Like, if the domain is solving a problem, it can help you get to the next level, or solves this
Mm-hmm.
problem that I have to launch my brand in a week and I don't have a domain, and there is Alex and everyone who can consult me, and that solves a huge problem, and I do it. Then we're kind of on the premium side of things. Doug solves a big problem, because not everyone can afford our domains, and he has
Yeah.
his space and segment of the market. So I respect everything he does, and I believe most marketplaces have that. But our angle, and we actually have this in our strategy and vision as a company, is to delight the market. And when we say we delight the market, if you ask a question and it takes 24 hours for us to reply, are you delighted or not? Are you satisfied? Because I fucking hate when I call someone or leave a message and they take 3 days to get a reply. So I try to put myself or the clients in my shoes. Like, if I hated, would it be okay for us to take such a long time to reply? Or when
Yeah.
we reply, to be like a very short, very short and and kind of brief reply. Instead, we aim to provide a very satisfactory, like in-depth reply with actually help. Every single interaction between us and our partners, mentors, clients should contribute, should add value. There is the contribution factor. And if it doesn't happen, we are not doing our job properly. We're not delighting the market.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
And I probably actually should have told you this question so you had a little bit of time to
No
think about
worries.
this.
I can
But
improvise.
what are some failures that you've had along the way? So I look at Alex and I'm like, he's very entrepreneurial. He's set up ODYS, he's bootstrapped it, very successful business. But a lot of people would look at you and think, it's all sunshines and rainbows. It's not
No, it's
that you
not.
don't have any gloomy days. What are some failures? Because I'm sure you'll have some.
Definitely. On the domaining side, a couple of years back, we got sued due to a trademark. And that could have taken us down because the company was huge in the billions. And if we didn't navigate that properly, they could have simply eaten us with all our operation and taken us to the ground. So that was a very, very, very specific turnaround management because they were this close from blocking our bank accounts, from taking us down. So, and that's simply because the first letter they sent to the Estonian office never reached to me. It was basically the Estonian office said it's most likely spam and they threw it away. And that came from some German lawyers, and they didn't even email us, and they emailed us 1 month. So that was that's why I'm so proactive with checking trademarks, because it can ruin you if you're not attentive enough, especially when you're launching a business. Another thing which we did was thinking that buying more inventory would solve a problem, and it's not. Sometimes people would, log into the marketplace, they would check a very specific domain, they can't find it, and then they complain you don't have that domain. So the first impulse is go and buy more inventory. And where do you get the money to buy from your inventory? From the profits the company makes. So the more inventory you buy, the lower the profits, right? Because you invest kind of in the inventory. And I said, no, that shouldn't be an issue, because I'd rather have a consultation or a strategy call and explain that most likely you don't need the domain you're looking for. Here's an alternative, something from what you have. And let's see, let's put it to work. I can help you get results. I can help you influence the bottom line in your company, the P&L report from that specific domain. Like maybe your assumption is wrong that you need a domain in the first place for that domain. So that has been another thing. And we have avoided the pitfall of just scaling inventory, which just sits there and does nothing. And at some point we're aggressively buying. I think we're buying at least $50,000 to $100,000 a month worth of inventory. And it was crazy. Like it wasn't solving a problem. And we thought we should do more with less inventory. This is what we did. Another huge failure was an attempt to build a marketing team using people or hiring people that aren't from the industry and having the false assumption that I can teach them everything. And that ended up a very big mistake. We ended up getting a lot of overhead in the company. And what happened is that created a lot of financial pressure on us. Mainly because you've hired a team, they're supposed to do something, but having very little awareness and having SEO or domain experience, the initiative, the campaigns they run, well, they're not affecting, we're not making more sales because of this. And this doesn't work out. So this happened almost a year and a half ago in one of our offices. I don't want to give names, but try to avoid with every single hire, with every single resource that you get, there should be some kind of impact on the bottom line. Like either sales go up, or if you get someone that saves you a lot of time or operating expenses, that still adds up to the bottom line because operating expenses go down. So be very pragmatic. Every single new hire should give you ROI. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're going down. And I had other businesses that bankrupted in the past, and I'm very attentive with that because the attempt to scale can bring you down. So that's the lesson I learned. That's why I ended up realizing that small is beautiful. Like you can grow your revenues, but try to still small. You don't need all that overhead here, all the pressure.
Yeah, I think the hiring one probably resonates a little bit to me because we were looking for, I don't know what specifically the role was, but we were looking to hire an SEO, um, And typically, we usually hire apprentices, people that don't know SEO, right? But then this guy applied. We're like, oh, he's an SEO expert. So we're like, all right, well, we'll get him in for an interview. He came in for the interview, and very quickly we realized that he's not a perfect fit. And what I mean by that is he very quickly said, like, yeah, I don't do any link building. I just craft perfectly well written content and wait for the links to arrive. And we're like, I mean, that would work for a website like IKEA or Yell,
Yeah,
but it wouldn't work for a brand new website. So,
definitely not.
but yeah, I totally get it when you're talking about the hiring process and stuff like that. But yeah, I won't take much any more of your time.
No
Where can
worries.
people find you?
So it's mostly social networks: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I think my handle or username is Alex Odys Global everywhere. So even if you Google it, you can find me. I think you can you can still find me on Skype. I think I have lots of, like, almost 1,500 contacts on Skype, active ones. And yeah, generally speaking, just go to our website. If you ask for me through the contact form, I'll most likely end up replying because that will be assigned to me. Yeah, so I'm available. I'm active in the community, so I'm eager to jump on calls. I don't mind hustling.
All right, perfect. What I'll do is I'll have all of your social profiles and the link to ODYS where you can
Good.
message Alex. But again, thanks for joining. And that,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, no worries. That has been the podcast about expired domains, the truth about expired domains. And I also feel like we've myth busted a lot of
You certainly
theories.
did.
So yeah, thanks.
Cheers. My pleasure.